Welcome to the ThinkFactory podcast. We got one question for you. What keeps you up at night?
So welcome back to the ThinkFactory podcast and the Printfluencers podcast. This is the first time that the two podcasts have had their worlds collide and create a joint episode. So welcome, Caitlin Shanks, and thanks for bringing the Printfluencers podcast to the forefront and doing a joint session with the ThinkFactory.
I know we're making history today, combining the two podcasts and seeing if we can make a little magic here today. I'm very excited. Thanks for having me.
Oh, and thank you for having me on the Printfluencers podcast. Hopefully it's a slow news day, so we can actually make some news from this. So before we get started, Caitlin, I would love for you to introduce yourself, and maybe I'll do the same when you're done.
Yeah, so I am, aside from being the Printfluencers host, my day job is working with a company called Racami. We're a software company, and specifically, I am their manager of sales and marketing.
And as you said, the host of the Printfluencers podcast.
Yes.
And I'm Chris Santomassimo. I'm actually a lawyer and a partner at OGC Solutions, and we specialize in being the outside general counsel for printing and packaging companies. And Caitlin and I spent a lot of time at the same kinds of events, talking to industry leaders. And on the side, I'm one of the hosts of the ThinkFactory podcast, hopefully sharing some, interesting thought leadership around issues that are interesting to lots of industries, but certainly in packaging and printing.
Definitely. And we're combining two departments that typically don't get along too well. On sales, we're selling things, we're making contracts, we're adding in loopholes every which way. And you're coming behind us trying to close those loopholes and, swat us on the back of the hand when we oversell things.
Well, the good news about Racami is that you've got a great reputation for performance and, satisfying your customers' needs, your clients' needs. Our job really is not to slow people down and slap them on the hands, but really just right size the relationship, make sure the documents all match what everybody expects, and then the marriage that you create when you start providing the software, it's going to be a smoother ride because everybody knows what they're getting into and they know what's going to happen if it doesn't work for some, rare reason,
Mm-hmm. And what I think you guys do is just so interesting because you're not just the counsel, the internal counsel for a specific company. You work with so many others. And like I was joking about while we were prepping for this, you're the legal as a service. So what does that entail? How did you even realize there was a niche for this in the market?
Well, and I appreciate you saying that. What attracted me to the market was really two things. One is I was the in-house lawyer for AGFA, which everybody knows from both offset and digital printing. But I also love the industry. I love what I see in terms of this combination of art and science and technology and software that all come together in a really, I think, a really vibrant industry. The folks that say that print is dead haven't come to one of these trade shows and seen what printers really do every single day. But like Racami, we're serving a need in that industry, which is the majority of printing companies and packaging manufacturers are mid-market companies that aren't large enough to really have a legal staff. And what they miss, or what they long for, maybe is the better way to say it, is some people that understand their business that can help them manage risk, manage expectations, just make them sleep better at night, frankly, knowing that things are handled from a legal standpoint and a regulatory standpoint. And we try and be creative about how we serve clients. And one of the ways that we do that is we can offer a fixed fee for a client to have his legal needs satisfied with a predictable monthly fee. And I'm able to bring into play my team as well. We're able to bring into play lots of years of experience with the industry, both on the manufacturer side as well as representing printers and packaging companies. So we know where the pitfalls and the stumbling blocks are. We know what to look for. We know how to explain it. We know the terminology, and we could just make everybody, have a better prospect for success in how they do business, both on the supplier side and as well as on the customer side.
And I think that's even more important nowadays, just the fact that you've had so much experience with so many different companies all over this industry that really benefits the end user. Because if you throw somebody in, there is some nuance in this crazy world of print and mail. And if you don't really know the footing, know the players, know how this industry works, I think you could really get into a little bit of trouble. It's not, we don't as easily fit under that manufacturing umbrella, even though we try.
Yeah, it's true. Absolutely. And I think it's because of all the complications that printers face, that it's not just putting ink on paper, ink on board. I mean, better than anybody that you've got all these data issues. You've got AI, which I think we're going to talk a little bit about, that's all of a sudden made it even more complex in terms of how do you get data, customer data, your clients' data, organized and put together such that you're going to be able to print something. And oh, by the way, you've got other technological things you're doing. You've got this whole array of services, digital services that go along with the printed piece, QR codes, landing pages, all kinds of that, all kinds of issues like that. And it's super complicated. And one thing I see, and one thing I think is interesting with Racami is you're helping solve for that issue. You're taking some of the complication out of that business.
Yeah, exactly. And we're trying to de-risk that business too, because this is where our two worlds really do meet, is when we're talking about compliant industries like the healthcare, the finance, the insurance, all of those sorts of spaces where, I was actually just on a call with a company, and they mentioned they're a decent sized retailer and they do runs of printed coupons. And if one thing is wrong on those coupons that go out across the country, I mean, that can be just millions of dollars in lost revenue if something goes wrong. If I'm saving 75 cents on my body wash versus 50 cents. And it's just making sure that we don't put those companies at risk, that we open them up to liability. And that can be tricky when they have maybe some legacy systems, some archaic data, what have you. Like, okay, how do I still keep those around, but make it secure, build up their ecosystem so that they're using technology that pulls from the past, securely brings it into the present, and ultimately delivers the communication that's got the right data, that's going to the right person at the right time. There's a lot of moving pieces, and we try and bring all of that together under one sort of master system, which is what we architect.
Yeah, we do the same thing in terms of how we raise issues with clients or their partners, how we try and manage the risk and take some of the rough edges off. But like us, I think what you're doing at Racami is you're controlling as much of the process as you possibly can, realizing, especially when you're mailing things, that there are some things out of your control. So how do you manage that risk as well is really important. How can you manage all the risks of the pieces of the process that you control? And then you might say that we're also involved in that second piece, which is we're dealing with a postal service or some other carriers that you're basically handing off a printed piece or a package to another provider that you just don't really have any control over. Say, how do you manage the risk around that? Exactly. Well, yeah, we can cross our fingers and toes all day long, but what happens if there's a dissatisfied customer? And some of our clients are in the space where they use your software to provide the services for their clients, right? So you may be in an implant situation like you're talking about, a retailer, you're dealing directly with the source of that data. If you add another layer on that with an outsourced provider, all of a sudden you've got that other layer of risk.
You've got two people to answer to if things don't go well. Yeah, exactly. And they rely on you. And one mishap could lose a client, and that could be a core part of their business. So the risk just amplifies tenfold. So making sure that the security is in place, that we're crossing our T's and dotting our I's is so important. And it's definitely something that Racami has evolved in. And, I'm not going to say that we were perfect since the get-go, but it's definitely something that we really focus on today.
Yeah, it's our job, I think, on either side of the spectrum, maybe, is to turn risk into an opportunity, not to make it something scary that people should shy away from. Because everything you do has some amount of risk associated with it. Just getting up in the morning or crossing the street could be a risky proposition. Now, how do you deal with it, and
Yeah.
how do you prepare for the future if that risk arises? You do as much as you can to avoid it, but what happens later if it just becomes unavoidable? And so certainly Racami and the type of software that you provide is going to give you that as much of a span of control over the earlier stages. How do you go from data to printed piece ready for the mail?
hmm
For sure.
And I would say control, the root of that, it all starts with visibility and making sure that you can even just see what's going on in your operation. You know where all of the data is, how it's moving through the process to actually become a composed document and then get ready for the mail. And if you can have that layer of visibility through, really your end-to-end workflow, then I think that's always step one in terms of reducing your risk.
I would agree. It's really important to be able to diagram your operation or to see the workflow as it's in operation, and of course monitor it along the way. But I think what
Yeah.
you find is, especially in companies that that they may be a 50-year-old company. They've been doing things fairly well without too much trouble for a long time, and everybody kind of knows in their head what the process is, but nobody sits down to really scope it out and see how can we do it better, or where are the hidden issues or the hidden potential problems. And that's something that I think is super important. You
Yeah.
provide the visibility to it, but you got to get to the point where you're really analyzing that process to find the opportunities for efficiency, et cetera, but also manage out the risk.
Absolutely. And I think that's becoming more and more prevalent, especially in this world of mergers and acquisitions, because in our space, that's happening. I feel like every day I get a news alert that so and so has bought so and so and they're combining forces. And when you don't have, that visibility and that real-time tracking, and it's all just stored in the brain trust, the people who've been there for 30, 40 years and just know how things work, that can get that can add risk in this risk back and forth that we're playing today.
For sure.
And I would imagine that makes the legal side of those transactions all the more difficult.
Yeah, I would say so. One thing I think we share in terms of an approach or a value to clients is you give them the opportunity to really do that analysis, right? To chart out the operation and think about how could they do it better. One of the ways that you're doing it, I think, is you're providing best in class technology that's going to require them to really look at how the heck are we doing it, or why are we doing these things. It's the kind of question that you get when you get a new executive, especially somebody from outside the industry, to come in and run a
Oh, yeah.
company. And the answer that you get most of the time is, well, that's how we've always done it. And it usually involves
hmm
some bizarre workaround, right?
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
it kind of works and people just take it for granted. But then when an outsider comes in and scratches their head and says, well, I don't even understand why you would do it that way, all of a sudden you've got
Yeah.
that dialogue about, well, maybe we could do it better. Just as an aside, that's one of the things we do at no cost for people in the industry, is to do a health assessment about their operations when it comes to contracts and human resources and labor and real estate and such, to really drive some of that dialogue a little bit and find what are the risk issues and what are they worth to the company, and what can we do to make them a little bit better.
Yeah, and I just had this realization as you were explaining this, which we've talked about before, so I don't know why
Yeah,
it's hitting me so late, but we do very similar things. You do your risk assessment, and then we also come in and we love digital whiteboarding. So we
right.
get on a call and we're whiteboarding out your existing workflow and trying to map out everything you've got going on. And then it's sometimes hard to see the forest through the trees. And so we come in to, bring that different point of view and honestly ask a lot of questions around, well, why are you doing it this way? Is there a
Hmm.
better way? Because sometimes if you don't have that third party coming in, it's hard to see it and it's hard to sort of self-diagnose. Some people are great at it, but some people aren't, especially if you have been doing things the same way 20, 30, 40, 50 years. that's so insular, and it's probably been very successful, but things are changing so rapidly with AI and with digital, that if you don't bring in some folks from the outside world who see all of these different use cases, who work with just a ton of different clients in every industry, how are you going to get those new ideas? I mean, maybe if you go to conferences like Printing United, then that's probably a good case for getting some new ideas and use cases.
Sure.
But otherwise, I always tell people, call in the experts, take advantage of the free services that they provide. Because I don't know about you. I mean, yes, it's great to sign up a client after doing an assessment, doing a whiteboard. But at the same time, I know that even if it doesn't work out, like, well, we still feel good. We provided that service. Like, there was still value in it for everyone. We learned something. Hopefully they learned something. It's still, something good for our industry.
What I think you bring to the table in that regard is you mentioned you've got lots of clients, right? So you can sort of you can really be the source of what's a best in class operation, and you learn from something different from each of those clients, and you bring them together in a thought process that can really provide what the standard is, or maybe even establish the standard about a good operation versus a bad one.
Because let me tell you, we have made mistakes and we have learned from those mistakes.
Yeah.
So if you come to the table with ideas and we know why that doesn't work as well as you think it might, we're going to tell you that, and we're going to hopefully save you from having to go through those mistakes on your own.
Yeah.
Which I think, that'll save you an immense amount of time and money and
No
a lot
doubt.
of Advil intake.
That's for sure. You know what? You mentioned AI. I'd love to hear, your sort of experience with it, view on it, because it really has a lot of tentacles across not just printing and packaging, but industries in general. And it's had a major impact on even in its infancy. It's had a real major impact on how we deliver legal services and what people come to expect.
Yeah. So it's still in its infancy, right? I mean, everyone is trying to use it. There's probably not many companies I run into who aren't using it in some form or fashion. But when we're looking at it at Racami, and we've got, an AI committee that we've developed internally, cross-departmental teams coming together. And when we're looking at it, the hardest part of implementing, a modern workflow solution always comes down to the data. How are we getting data into the system? How are our customers, if they have their own suite of customers, who knows how they're sending data over? It could be emails, Excel files, CSVs, you never know. And so being able to massage that data, clean it up, ingest it into the system is one of those sticking points where if we could alleviate that, wow, we're off to the races. And now we've shortened a 12-month project down to maybe like 5 or 6.
Mm-hmm.
And so when I'm looking at AI, I'm thinking, okay, how do we get AI to help us create better data or clean up our old data? And I was just reading an article the other day, and it was talking about like data and AI and using agents. I think it was, Salesforce. Pulling up the article right now. And they acquired Informatica. And then their agents are going to come in and be able to, use the data catalog and use all of their data integrations and, provide these master data management services. But I'm thinking, okay, it's still a bad data in, bad data out situation that we're faced with, especially Salesforce. I'm in sales. I have used many a CRM at every company I've worked for, and they're never great. Like, they're full of kind of bad data. You got to keep it up. The salespeople, we never want to do the data cleanup.
Right.
And so I'm thinking there could be a massive opportunity if we can fix that problem. How do we train AI to help us with the data cleanup process in those agents? But what are you seeing in terms of AI and the challenges?
I'll have to preface it by saying that the legal industry is always a little slower in terms of being adopters, right? And it's probably partially
for good reason.
Yeah, well, yeah, I mean, we're cautious by nature, I guess. We've really seized the opportunity to use some of the really proven tools. Like we use Westlaw from Thomson Reuters, and they've got some pretty tremendous AI powered tools that really point to the whole collection of Westlaw information, which is always, it's solid, it's updated, etc. Um, but and I see there's a ton of potential there, but what I also see is a couple of pitfalls. Um, People love to find or print articles about lawyers that do silly things, and I guess we bring that on ourselves a little bit. So there's a ton of articles that have come out about lawyers that go on to ChatGPT and say, write me a brief about X, and they get a brief and it's completely hallucinated. The cases that they cite don't exist, and the law's bad, et cetera, and they get sanctioned. So that happens, and that's pure stupidity, honestly. Hopefully, it doesn't reflect most of us. What I see on the client side, though, is a lot of excitement about the potential for it. A lot of, there's a lot of unknowns, a lot of misunderstanding about it. But I see some, I don't know, rash behavior, I guess I would say. People see it as an opportunity to maybe save money on their legal expenses. So they'll ask one of the
Mm,
platforms to generate an agreement about something, write me a contract about whatever. And it looks nice and it looks good. It's presentable, but the contents aren't really proven by anybody that's got experience and doesn't really, tell you much other than these are provisions that the platform created,
yeah.
especially on a chat GPT. That's a really risky proposition, honestly. Again, it might sound nice and there may even be some Latin phrases in there that spice it up, but it's not going to help you necessarily when things go south. And that's
Okay.
that's that's the place I would say you got to be really, really be careful. And then to your point about a committee, having people within your company that can help, you know, understand it and find ways to use it in the right way. That's what I
Yeah,
would
I
say.
was I was just at a conference and this has come up probably the last three times with this specific group of folks. And we're talking about AI and governance has really become a much bigger and bigger conversation because all of these companies are in, compliant spaces or are working with variable data in the direct mail space. Like these things just can't go wrong. And if they're handling sensitive patient info, client info, um, they need to have data security around it and
Right.
company-wide policies on how to use it, what platforms are even, sanctioned by the company to be used, because I think that's one of the bigger and bigger risks that we're all realizing is that these companies, we just go out, you've got individuals who are logging on using web-based tools, adding in potentially sensitive or company information into these language models
I
almost
know.
with reckless abandon, and they're not doing it maliciously. They're just trying to be more productive or what have you, but it's opening up this huge holes of risk for the organization, um,
100%. Yeah.
which I imagine is going to hit the legal field
Well, it
eventually.
really does, but on your side, you're dealing with HIPAA protected information. You're dealing with SOC 2 certifications and others, that your customers have. And so what you got to be on target when it comes to the source of the AI power, so to speak, and making sure that they can still maintain those certifications and those obligations for sure. Frankly, I don't know how IT people sleep at night. I don't sleep that well, and IT people are just constantly under pressure, and they're getting barraged in all directions, right?
Yeah, I mean, the ones who are sleeping very soundly, I would have to say, might have their head in the sand a little bit because if you are looking at the news and just watching what happens in the industry, I mean, it's gotten so much worse now. But even 5 years ago, we were saying, well, it's not if you get hacked, it's when.
Right.
Like I kind of come from the data security world in a past life, and that was just such a huge part of the conversation. And now it's gotten exponentially more dangerous. But
Oh,
I think that's why you have to, just do the research and rely on experts and not saying you have to go hire a bunch of people, but reaching out to colleagues in the industry, talking to other people in the industry and just relying on the community to help formulate those standards and start to see, okay, where are the boundaries of this? Where can we use it well, and where are there gaps? Mm-hmm.
Well, on that score, you mentioned the Printing United Expo, which is coming up in October in Orlando, and I was kind of excited about it when I read about it, but you told me a little bit more about these roundtable discussions that are happening. I think you're going to be a leader of one of them or multiple roundtable sessions, right?
Yeah, so I will be joining Printing United with I think there's 15 or 16 of us who are the all-stars that Printing United has put together. And so you'll see us walking around in our jerseys, and we're also going to be leading these roundtable discussions, because a part of the feedback that the great team at Printing United, who actually puts on these conferences, found was that folks loved the sessions, but felt like there wasn't enough necessarily time to network with your peers unless you were going to the after parties or some of those other shows. And I get it. By 8 p.m., you're probably wanting to be in bed, shoes off, elevated. And the idea of having just another conversation is probably the last thing you want to do. And so we're moving it into the daytime when everyone still has energy. Mm-hmm. And so you can come, there will be all sorts of different topics, and we'll each be facilitating one of those conversations. But I believe there's 4 roundtable discussions happening, and I can link in our show notes too to some more information on that.
Fantastic.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's the best way to find out what's out there, other than to talking to pros like yourself, is, talk to your peers and find out what they're up to, and hopefully avoid some of the issues that they experienced and capitalize on the successes, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And even speaking of AI, just circling back, I'm very excited for the Printing AI Pavilion this year. I've seen the layouts and the diagrams and what they're going to have in there, and I think it'll be a really great spotlight on what the latest solutions are looking like. There's going to be expert talks happening there, like little rapid fire talks happening with experts. It's going to showcase, some real world AI applications. So to me, that just sounds like Disneyland. I'm excited. Sign me up. Where's my ticket? And so I'll definitely be there, but that's the thing I'm looking forward to. Is there anything that you've zoned in on? Like, what are you looking for at Printing United? What are you excited about?
I think the technology is always the most interesting. I agree with you. The AI stuff is really interesting, especially on the software side. I always get a kick out of the advances that make people's lives better, or that make people's business run more smoothly. One thing I note is the robotics that you'll see. One company in particular that I work really closely with is AGFA, and they've done a great job with robotics to take some of the people intensive, hard, boring work out of the process. For example, how do you feed your machine, and how do you take the boards off your wide format printer and after they're printed, and let the machine run overnight even in many cases. So the ability to use that type of technology to make people's jobs safer too, because there's a lot fewer industries with people in terms of taking a lot of that repetitive stress out of the business. It's just great for everybody and then when you see it in operation, you'll sit and stare at it for an hour, because it's just fun to watch. So that's what I really get. That's what I get charged up about.
Little ASMR video style content there.
Oh man, it's amazing. But again, it's that point where a little bit of art, or maybe a lot of art and technology, and the printing process of that, the traditional part of it, actually putting the ink on some media, when it all comes together like that, it's pretty fun to watch. And by the way, I don't want to forget what you do. Of course, it's you got the software running in the background and making everything happen. And sort of you're like the conductor of the orchestra, really, making sure that everybody's playing in tune at the right time, and hopefully providing a song that makes some sense, right?
Sometimes it can feel like we're a little bit like the man behind the green curtain, not to throw a Wizard of Oz reference in there, but Wicked 2 is about to come out. So
There you go.
I have
Nice.
to. Sometimes you don't always see what our software does. It's not, the sexiest thing. It doesn't provide this beautiful output like watching, a wide format machine go, but it's still at the end of the day is helping companies become more efficient and more profitable, which that's what we're all after. That's the bottom line.
Terrific. Well, I think we're getting to the end of our time here. You and I could probably go on for another 2 hours if we keep it up.
I cannot believe it's already been 50 minutes. I am shocked.
Yeah. Just tell Caitlin, tell folks where they can find you and Racami at the show.
Yeah, so other than me being just at that AI exhibit, my full gig will be at the Racami booth, which is 5406. And I do have to say I'm very excited. We're doing a Halloween theme this year, so expect a lot of candy and probably, some Monster Mash and a lot of those stretchy white spider webbing all over the place. So
that's terrific.
Come and trick or treat at our booth.
That's great. Very cool.
Mm-hmm. And what about you? Are you just walking around? Where can they find you?
Yeah, I think, reaching out to me either at the show or before the show. We don't have a booth, but certainly be there supporting the industry, supporting our clients and meeting new friends. So would love to spend some time in some of the meeting zones just to catch up with people as well.
Amazing. Awesome. Well, I think that probably wraps us up, but I'm so excited our two worlds got to collide and looking forward to meeting you in person at Printing United.
Well, hopefully we'll stay connected and the two worlds will collide more often for sure.
Absolutely. So, great.
We'll sign off for the Printfluencers podcast.
Signing off. All right. Thanks, everybody. Bye.
Thanks. And this has been Caitlin Shanks from Racami and Chris Santomassimo from OGC Solutions and the ThinkFactory podcast. We'll see you next time.